Meeting to order, and have staff please conduct the roll call. I believe someone's on mute.
Good morning. Thank you. Sorry about that. Commissioner Orth.
Here.
Commissioner McCowan.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
Commissioner Ward.
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Here.
Commissioner Ignacio.
Here.
Commissioner Bazzani.
Here.
Thank you. I believe everyone is here. Oh yes, Commissioner Winkle.
Here.
Thank you very much.
All righty. I want to say this isn't our first virtual meeting, so I think all of us have been on a number of them throughout the pandemic. So anyway, there was attachments that talked about instructions for remote meetings, and I will remind everyone just of a few bullet points: to mute yourself when not speaking, and silence other devices and notifications that may be around you. You unmute, of course, when you want to speak. For discussion, the chair will call on each commissioner by name for questions, comments on each item. But if you've been passed and you do have more comment, please come on and ask for recognition in order to make your comments or ask your questions. When making motions or seconding a motion, please state your name, and all votes will be conducted by roll call. And when we have public comment, I think the public has received their instructions as well. Okay, moving on, item number 2, public expression. The Commission welcomes participation in the LAFCO meeting. Any person may address the Commission on any subject within the jurisdiction of LAFCO, which is not on the agenda. There is a 3-minute limit and no action will be taken at the meeting. So I'd like to ask for public expression for items not on the agenda. Staff, is there anyone that would like to speak?
We have a number of participants in the waiting room. However, they are for the public hearing items. I do believe we have our legal counsel in the waiting room, and I would like to check when the time is appropriate.
You'd like to check to see if Mr. Brown's there?
Yes.
Okay, please do so.
Okay.
And when confirmed, we'll move on to the consent calendar.
Madam Chair, I'd like to pull 3C.
Okay.
Mr. Brown is in the meeting now.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Hinman. Okay, we're moving on to the consent calendar. We have 3A through 3D. Commissioner Ward has asked to pull, I believe it's the July claims. Is that correct, yes, Commissioner?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead on that?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I have some questions for staff. Uma, have you reviewed the Pacific Internet billing, and is that correct?
It is. I have reviewed it. We did receive a $15 credit, which was requested early last fiscal year when we had the outages, email outages, and so that was included on the bill as well.
Okay, thank you. And on the insurance, we had 7 credits out of 15. Do you know why we didn't get the full 15 credit? We haven't filed a claim in 20 years, I believe. Is there any way we can increase those credits?
I would have to look into that. I'm certainly happy to look into that with them.
Yeah, they mentioned that there's 15 available credits for it, and on our billing, we got credit for 7 of the 15. The third question is, has the Uyghur detachment been completed, and is there any more cost for that?
We are holding the payment for legal counsel until we review the item on the agenda today for the contract amendment for our legal counsel. All other fees have been paid, including the Board of Equalization.
Okay, so there probably will be a refund check submitted to her?
A very small one, yes.
Yeah, okay. And then, so you're holding back on the legal fee. Have you billed the city of Ukiah through our legal counsel?
Not yet. Again, we're waiting for the amendment on today's agenda.
Oh, okay. And last, Madam Chair, I just wanted to point out that bookkeeping is being done more by the clerk now, and I appreciate that, Uma. That cuts down on the cost for bookkeeping. And we ended our fiscal year with a $28,000 under budget, so that was good. And we didn't have to take any money out of our reserve accounts. We currently have in our county account $49,000, of which $40,000 will be transferred this Thursday to our savings bank account. So we should be good for the fiscal year so far. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I do have some corrections on the minutes, but commissioners, is there anyone else that would like to speak to the consent calendar items 3A through 3D? Hearing no one, I'd like to go through the minutes. And the first one, correction would be on page 7. And it's the 6th paragraph down. And this was actually done throughout the minutes, and I think it needs to be corrected. And it is the last sentence, but when we talk, the last line, MCCSD District Attorney Jackson, it probably should be the districts with an apostrophe S and a small a, because I don't think Mr. Jackson is our district attorney. It could be confusing. And it would be the same on page 8 also, and 4th paragraph down. And also in the 7th paragraph on that page.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Ignacio.
To change that. And then I'm also looking on page 9, and the first paragraph, 8th line, and it begins with unincorporated community that's been identified and confirmed that the wrecker in, it should say is now clear instead of in. Then going on to page 10, it's the first paragraph, 2nd line, and it says, and review PF, the standard fee. I think PF needs to be struck out. Then going down to the 5th paragraph, beginning with Commissioner Ward requested, you go to and asked it. I think that needs to be if. And then on the very last page, that would be page 11 of the minutes. If you go down the page under 8E, it'd be the 2nd bullet point. And the 2nd line there says suggested changed to the minutes. It should be changes, an S instead of a D. And that's all I have.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Ignacio.
Yes, sir.
Would you consider, for clarity, I agree with you, the district attorney moniker, but I think it would read better if we replaced everything you suggested regarding that to read as attorney for MCCSD District Jackson.
And that works for me. I just think for clarity and going into the future, it needs to be changed. So that's perfectly fine with me, sir.
I would like that, because if this was ever needed to be read out loud for those people that can't see it on the screen, I agree with you. It is confusing. So I'm only providing that to add to the clarity.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner McCowan.
Thank you. Well, District Attorney Eister might have an opinion on that also, but staff, and I'm sure they will, could do a word search for that phrase because it also appears on page 6. And
Correct.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Yes. I just missed it going through my paperwork, but thank you. Commissioner Orris, any comment, questions on the consent calendar?
No.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
No.
Commissioner Bazzoni?
No.
Alternate Commissioner Winkle?
No.
Okay, I don't think I missed anyone. So I'd like to entertain a motion.
This is Commissioner Gonzalez. I so move.
Commissioner Ignacio seconds.
So we have a motion with a second, and I think that motion includes corrections to the minutes.
That is true.
That's correct.
Thank you. Can we please conduct the roll call vote?
Certainly. Commissioner Ignacio,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Bazzani,
Yes.
Commissioner Orth,
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan,
Yes.
Chair Brown.
Yes.
Thank you. The
Okay.
motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Now we're moving on to agenda item 4, which is the public hearing items, and we do have one for A. Before we get into it, I'd like to read what the procedures are. The public hearing, when opened, will begin with the staff presentation, followed by commissioner questions and comments. And in this hearing, the district will be next with their comments, followed by commissioner questions and comments. The commission will then move forward to public comment. At this time, each speaker will have 3 minutes and be timed by the clerk. And due to the virtual meeting, commissioners can ask questions of each speaker at that time. After public comment, the commission will go back to staff for comment. And if needed, the district can also comment. Following the public hearing, or following the testimony in this public hearing, the public hearing can be closed for final deliberation by the commissioners. No motion can be made until the hearing is closed, although the commission can decide to continue the hearing if so desired. So, moving forward, and I do have the time now. So the public hearing is now open at 9:15 for the MSR SOI of Mendocino City Community Service District. So we vote to staff. Clerk, has proper notice been established?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. Has all correspondence been posted along with receipt of any telephone messages? Please note it.
I believe so, yes.
Okay, there were, I believe, 3 letters of comment.
This is Executive Officer Hinman, and we have received letters over the weekend, and those have all been provided to the commission. They have not yet been posted on the website. We also have a number of public commenters in the waiting room to speak today.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do you have a question of staff about the Correspondence? Hearing none. We'll now go to staff. Please begin your presentation on this particular agenda item. Thank you.
Our analyst, Larkin Filer, will be presenting. I would like to note that the district's, the attorney for the district, Mr. Jackson, is on the line and available in the waiting room. We also have Ed Powers, Steve Gomes, Barbara Reed, Paul Clark, and I believe Trey Strickland with Environmental Health is in the waiting room. Also received an email from a Charles Cresson Wood who would like to speak, although I don't see him in the waiting room yet. And Analyst Filer for the presentation.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. As background, the Commission held 2 workshops in May and June for the Mendocino City CSD, MSR, and SOI update, and directed staff to proceed with this public hearing and verify the district's position on the proposed areas of interest. Based on recommendations from district staff and direction from the District Board of Directors at their July 27th meeting, there are no area of interest designations identified on Figure 2-1A. The district's SOI is recommended to be reduced to a coterminous sphere consistent with Policy 10.1.4.A. Since there have been no annexations in the last 12 years, there's no planned urban development, and there's a low projected growth and demand for services. Since the June workshop, some revisions have been made to the study, such as the previously identified area of interest designations were removed. Section 3.3 on page 92 of the packet and MSR determinations 15, 16, and 17 on page 105 of the packet were added to clarify the district's legal authority and active and latent powers related to water services. Appendix D under Section 8.4 was added to show the 1987 Special Groundwater Legislation AB 786. Table 2.3 was revised on page 59 of the packet to update the term expiration dates for district board members and to show that 4 board of director seats are scheduled to be filled by election in November. And the county's Mendocino town plan policies were moved from Section 4.1.6 to Appendix C under Section 8.3. In the staff report, updates were provided regarding the public comments received at the workshop related to the district's groundwater management services and extending wastewater services to the Road 500D area. Staff recommends that the Commission find the Mendocino City CSD, MSR, and SOI update is exempt from CEQA and approve the study by resolution as detailed in the 2 recommendations from the staff report on page 42 of the packet. This concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Orth?
Yes, one question on the furnishing of water services. Why is it that recycled water does not count as providing water services? Because the district does plan to extend that service beyond the high school, including providing to fire hydrants for the fire department as well as the additional schools. I just need to know why that doesn't count as delivering water for beneficial uses.
Commissioner Orth, maybe I'm confused, but I believe the Section 3.3 was intended to clarify that recycled water is a component of water service. Is there a particular part that needs to be corrected to reflect that?
Well, I just want to know whether that counts as meeting the standard for delivering water, for exercising the power of delivering a water service.
Right, I would agree with you. That's correct. That is part of exercising water service.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to have a little bit of discussion regarding the questions that were raised by Mr. Gomes, Ms. Reed, and Mr. Clark regarding the district's legal authority to provide water and groundwater management. Just for the record, it is in our staff report, but I would like to have it for the benefit of the people that are in listening, and also the Road 500D and what Mr. Powers conversation. We did receive another updated letter from Mr. Powers this morning. Just to make some comments on those two items, I appreciate it.
Certainly. So on, let's see, what page is it? On page 43. Yeah. So first, there is an update provided related to the water service question. It looks like the question is about the legal authority of the district to provide water and groundwater management services. The claim, I believe, is that if the district is not legally authorized to provide water services as defined in Water Section 515, then the district is not legally authorized to provide groundwater management services according to Water Code Section 10702. We have been able to determine that the district is authorized to provide water services by passage of Measure A in 1985, and based on the authority provided in the CSD Principal Act. And so they do meet the requirement of being authorized to provide water services according to that Water Code Section 10702. And then we also noted that the definition of water service in Water Code Section 515 was added to the Water Code in 1991 and was not necessarily contemplated by the legislature in drafting that special groundwater legislation, AB 786 in 1987. And then we also clarified that there is no requirement in the Water Code Section 10702 that a local agency exercise its water services authority. Although as we identified in Section 3.3 of the study, which was added, the district does supply water for beneficial uses, including tertiary treated reclaimed water and well water storage at the wastewater treatment plant. And the district has been providing groundwater management services since the 90s. So effectively, both water and groundwater management services are active powers for the district. We did look at if there's other components of water service that the district might desire to expand. And we did identify that there are some latent powers related to water service. And specifically, if the district did want to develop a municipal central water system or replenish the local aquifer, if they wanted to proceed with those types of water activities, since they will likely require a water source from outside the local aquifer, we determined that that was a new or different function or class of service and would require activation of latent powers. And then related to Road 500D, there was a preliminary conversation between Mr. Powers and district staff. One of the potential solutions would be working with the state related to tying into their wastewater infrastructure and service allocation, and potentially considering an extension of service by contract. The other option is district annexation, which would involve many different steps and a significant amount of time and collaboration. There is a number of steps outlined in the staff report, and these were just some ideas of steps to take and process that could be followed. But again, I think a significant amount of work would be involved in developing that process for annexation. This was really just intended to address a number of the commissioners at the workshop seemed interested in providing kind of a roadmap or a vehicle for process if annexation were pursued. And I believe that is about all. Did you have any other further questions?
Yeah, is there anything that CALAFCO could do to accelerate any kind of hookup for 500, Road 500D? Anything we could do to help out?
I believe, well, I have been working with Mr. Powers and the district, and, you know, if the commission so desires, we're happy to continue helping through the communication process. In regard to an application, we would either be processing an extension of service by contract or an annexation. And again, we can just assist as, you know, those types of applications might be developed. Beyond that, I don't know that there is too much more that we can particularly provide as a service at this time.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
I may jump in, Larkin. I mean, right now you're proposing, my understanding is you're proposing to exclude that area from the sphere. Is that correct?
Please state your name when you're
Scott
commenting.
Brown.
That is correct. It is proposed, a coterminous sphere is proposed for the district, which is essentially the same boundary as the jurisdictional boundary.
So, I mean, if you wanted to facilitate the provision of sewer service to that area, you would include that area in the sphere today.
That
Good
is
point.
correct, yes.
Good point. Well, I would like to see some, this is Commissioner Ward, I'd like to see something like that because I think it is a concern for Mendocino County when we have septic systems that are failing. And I think it's our obligation to do what we can to support those failing systems.
And Commissioner Ward, we will have the district up making comments as well. So you may want to hold that statement.
Very well.
Thank you, sir. Anything else? We'll move on to the next commissioner. Commissioner Gonzalez.
I had the same concerns that Commissioner Ward has, but at this point I will defer any comments till after the district speaks.
Thank you. Commissioner Ignacio.
No comments at this time.
Commissioner McCowan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I may have missed it. The question came up at our previous meeting and in correspondence about whether the district has bylaws or not, and if they can take certain actions if they don't have bylaws. Again, I may have missed it, but what was the answer to that question?
Madam Chair, this is Analyst Filer. I'm hoping that the District Attorney Jim Jackson could speak to that. I have gotten some preliminary information from the District Superintendent that their bylaws were adopted in September of 2008, but I have not had a chance to review that information, so maybe we could refer that to the District Attorney.
And have we confirmed, and this would be for our council, that they are required to have bylaws in order to legally take certain actions?
This is Scott Brown. I don't, there's no requirement in Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg that the agency have bylaws. It is a normal and customary activity because there are many gaps in the law as to how the commission may operate, and those are typically filled in through bylaws. But there's no requirement in most agency statutes for that agency to have bylaws.
Thank you, and perhaps Mr. Gomes will comment. I don't have it in front of me, but I believe he cited a state code section to the effect that the district shall adopt bylaws. So I imagine we'll hear more on that. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Bazzani.
I don't have any comments at this time.
Okay, thank you. Alternate Commissioner Winkle.
No comments at this time.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any other commissioner? Another question? Hearing no one come forward, we'll ask for a presentation from the district, and I'm not sure who is going to be doing that. So please unmute yourself and state your name for the record.
This is E.O. Hinman, and I will bring in Mr. Jackson for the district.
Thank you.
Mr. Jackson? Mr. Jackson, you'll need to mute the meeting video while you participate.
This is Jim Jackson.
Please go forward, sir.
Yes.
Do you have any comments for from the district?
Yes, just briefly. I'm sorry, my phone is still doing something here. Just a second, please. There you go. My computer wasn't muted. I apologize. The board of directors at its July meeting voted 3-1 that it does not have any present intention to annex additional property and would agree with staff's recommendation of a coterminous boundary. We also did speak with Mr. Powers at that meeting, and he's talking about tapping in directly to the state parks line, and we suggested that he contact state parks since they own that line. We do not. And if he can tap in directly, you know, that's perfectly fine. We can deal with how we're going to deal with treating his effluent. And I heard a reference to a failing septic. I don't believe that the property at issue is a developed property, so I don't know that failing septic is the correct phrase. He has talked about neighbors that may have failing septics, but I don't know, and I understand there's a representative from environmental health who maybe can fill us in on that. As far as the bylaws, I am told that the district has bylaws, and I looked at that section 61045, and I wouldn't read it the way whoever is promulgating that reads it. It just says that the district shall adopt rules and rules and bylaws for its procedures and for its proceedings, and it certainly does, have that. So in any event, that's about the extent of my comments.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jackson. Commissioners, I go down the line. Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to hear from environmental health on the failing systems, and I would like to hear from Mr. Gomes on the bylaw issue as well. Thanks.
Okay, and we will do that during public comment. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Again, same as Commissioner Ward. We need to hear from them.
Okay, thank you, sir. Commissioner Ignacio.
No additional from what Commissioner Ward has suggested. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner McCowan.
No.
Commissioner Benzoni.
No comment.
Alternate Commissioner Winkle.
No comment at this time.
Commissioner Orth.
No comment until after public gets to comment.
Okay. Then I believe it's now the moment to go to public comment. And Ms. Hinman, I would like to hear from environmental health if they're in the waiting room. Can we have them please speak first?
Thank you. I will go ahead and leave Mr. Jackson in the meeting, but place him on mute. We have two callers that I'm not sure who they are, but I will bring them in and see if we can identify Mr. Strickland. For those in the waiting room, as you enter the waiting room, please put your laptop or computer on mute so that we don't get feedback from the recorded meeting.
Okay, so environmental health is not present at the meeting today.
I'm bringing in the number 234-6625. Could you please identify yourself?
Hi, this is Trey Strickland, the Environmental Health Director. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. There's some feedback. Okay.
So, I'm sorry, this is Trey Strickland. Is it my turn to speak?
Yes, it is, sir.
Okay, well, thank you, Chair Brown and Commission members. I'm Trey Strickland, Mendocino County Environmental Health Director. I'm with you today because our Land Use Program Manager, Marlena Dooley, is not in the office this week. So I was calling in to speak kind of generally that Mendocino County, we certainly have a number of areas throughout the county that with less than ideal soil conditions for septic systems. And of course, it's in everybody's best interest to have the highest level of protection available for yourself, your neighbors, your community. Nobody wants to be around a failing septic system. Regarding one of the parcels on Road 500D, I know it's alleged to be in failure, to have a failing septic system. I cannot confirm whether or not that's the case right now. But every single on-site septic system in our county has an unknown expiration date, for lack of a better term, where its functionality is reduced to a point where it can begin having potential negative impacts on people. And certainly bluff-top properties don't have a lot of room for error and can be problematic to repair or replace. Once a system is in failure, it can be very difficult to mitigate. And even when money is not the issue. So I know the Regional Water Board is a big proponent of consolidating private individual systems into bigger, professionally managed systems for wastewater as well as freshwater systems. But regarding septic systems, the potential for adverse public impacts is exponentially reduced when septic is handled in a wastewater treatment plant rather than an on-site system, particularly non-standard systems in areas with the conditions not really suitable for on-site sewage disposal. So that's what I had to say, just kind of speaking in general about the issue. I'm happy to try to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland, and we will go through each commissioner. They may have a question or comment, and we will begin with Commissioner Gonzalez.
Mr. Strickland, again, it sounds like you're basically saying that at this point you don't have firsthand knowledge, but that you'd encourage those private systems to basically get in line with a managed system. Is that the way I'm hearing it?
Well, yes, sir. Just in general, if anytime there's a possibility of plumbing into a professional system, it's really in everybody's best interest because a parcel that's being developed today will have an area set aside for a replacement septic system. Once the original system fails, which at some point will happen, a lot of older parcels don't have a designated replacement area. And once areas, a developed area, there's setbacks for water wells and for septic systems. So once you start kind of drawing all the lines where all the setbacks are, it could be difficult, if not impossible, to locate an area for a replacement system that's not encroaching upon some of these required setbacks.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Ignacio.
Thank you for being here. I don't have any further questions for you at this time.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner McCowan.
No questions. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation.
Commissioner Bazzoni.
No questions. Thank you.
Alternate Commissioner Winkle.
No questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Orris.
Here I am. Yes, I have a question. Are there not technologies when a septic system fails to reconstruct in a different technology, just more costly for those areas that are old and do not have the secondary field identified?
Well, I'm not aware of any technologies where you can replace in the existing failed area with a newer system. I know that there's a number of non-standard systems that are available to better function places that have high groundwater or very poor draining soils, whether it's draining too fast or too slow. There's certainly a lot of technologies available, but having the space to do it on a parcel can be problematic, and also I would imagine being on a bluff top, there's a big potential for the failure to daylight in an area that can be very difficult to deal with if it's trickling down the bluff.
So just as a follow-up, thereby an undeveloped parcel has the opportunity to put in a more modern septic system that can meet the needs of that property. Is that correct?
Yes, there's any number of non-standard systems that are approved for particular different situations, and a real common one that's been around for a while is a Wisconsin mound. That maybe you've all heard of. That's a way to deal with, not having good soil to deal with.
Thank you. And I've seen those mounds utilized in this county and in most jurisdictions, not in Brook Trails, but I know the city of Willits, outlying areas, there are people mounding, as well as in the various valleys. And I'd imagine this particular property might have that available as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ward.
Yes, thank you. Trey, does your department also deal with water wells?
Yes, we do.
Okay, and back to the septic systems that may be failing, how would you know, and if you do know one is failing, what does your department typically do?
Well, so one way, if someone has a non-standard system, it's supposed to be looked at and managed, and there should be some documentation that would help demonstrate its functionality. A lot of times it's a site visit with our inspector, and it can be, I think it's typically a system in failure or close to failure. I think there are certain signs, the type of vegetation that's growing on top, and of course it can also stink. Our mitigation is to direct the property owner to mitigate the situation. And that can be problematic when finances is an issue. And it can be problematic when, since the original system went in, if if two neighbors popped up and they each have put in a well, and it happens to be on near the corner of your property, that was the one place that you could put in a system, a replacement area that hadn't yet been designated, but now their well is creating a setback and takes out that corner of the property that maybe was the only reasonable place to put a system. So it can be problematic for a number of reasons when a system goes into failure.
Okay, I believe you mentioned at a previous meeting that you know of several locations throughout the county that have failing septic systems. What would you recommend of how LAFCO would deal with that in the future for municipal service reviews?
Well, I would say, and again, so land use and septic systems is not my expertise, but I will mention Anderson Valley, Boonville area, has some pretty poor soils, and their problem is that it's so well draining that you really don't see the problem at the surface, but it impacts the groundwater. In Laytonville, I believe there's large areas of Laytonville that has very high groundwater, and so of course that's problematic with septic systems, and if for a lot of people saying, hey, your system needs to be replaced, and this Wisconsin mound will work just fine for you, but it's going to cost $30,000. And I'm just throwing that number out there. I don't know whether it's accurate or not, but sure. I think it's probably close. Okay. And so, it can be problematic. What I think, and I'm not the expert, but I believe the water board says, well, the answer is you need to get a municipal system in there that can handle everybody's septage and not have site-to-site potential for negative impacts on the community that may or may not be addressed or mitigated in a timely manner.
And that would also apply to wells, water wells that are not deep enough or they're being somewhat contaminated, that they should also look to a municipal water system rather than private wells. Would you agree?
Absolutely, and I think that's a big trend for the State Water Resources Control Board, is to try to consolidate individual systems into community systems, and to consolidate small community systems into larger community systems, just because it's more effective and safer, and it tends to be easier to get issues addressed.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your input. I appreciate it. That's all I have.
Okay, and thank you very much for being here with us today. I appreciate it.
Sure, my pleasure.
A lot of questions, and also gave us an education. Okay, moving on to the next public speaker, Ms. Hinman, who is coming on next. And if that speaker would state their name at the beginning of their comment.
I put Mr. Strickland back in the waiting room, and we will bring in, there's a group, Mr. Gomes, Ms. Reed, and Paul Clark. We'll admit them.
Who's coming on next?
So please put your computer on.
And if that speaker would state their name at the beginning of their comment.
What'd they say? We can't hear anything.
Put your computer on mute. You are in the meeting.
Well, wait a minute, we just see them.
Mr. Gomes,
Okay.
Reed, and Paul Clark.
Okay. Okay. That's good.
Who's coming on next?
Mr. Gomes.
We're here.
Okay, I'd like the next speaker to please state the name for the record and have 3 minutes.
Who's the next speaker?
Okay. Excuse me, let me get closer to the phone. Yeah, this is Steve Gomes. And I'd like to start with the bylaws first, and then Ms. Reed's going to speak also And then after that, I'd like to continue with the water and the 10702 issue. So going to the bylaws, it's not in Cortese Knox. It's in the Community Services District code section. You should have this number. I gave this to everybody, I think, over the weekend, 6105F. The Board of Directors shall adopt rules or bylaws for its proceedings. Okay, so this was goes all the way back to, it was amended in 2005 possibly, but at some point from at least 2005 on, they should have had bylaws which do not exist as far as we know. And then I want to hand this over to Miss Barbara Reed right now to tell you what she has found.
I'm Barbara Reed, and I went into communities when I couldn't find meeting notices, and there was a special meeting coming up, and I wanted to get some information on the meeting, and the notices were filed, posted all over, not all over town. They were nowhere to be found for most people. You'd think they'd be at the post office where people go and you could see the notice. Well, I went to the district and told them there were no notices posted. They said, yes, there were. I said, well, where are the bylaws? And where are these notices? So then I went out. She said, there are no bylaws. So I went to a meeting on the 27th of January, and that's where they were going to propose to adopt bylaws. So if they had them in 2008, why were they trying to adopt them on January 27th of this year? They did not adopt them. They they weren't familiar with either Sturgis or Robert's rules, so they postponed the meeting or the vote to review them. And they have not brought them back, so they don't have bylaws. Well, if they had them, they wouldn't have put them on the meeting for the 27th. So
of what year?
Of
this year?
Of this year.
Yeah, 2020.
So there are no bylaws from the secretary and also from this meeting that I attended. I think that's all. Unless somebody has some questions, I'll be happy to answer.
We'll go through each one of the commissioners here in a moment. Mr. Gomes, do you have final comments?
Yeah, well, on bylaws, I have comments on the water part, the drinking water part of this at 10702.
Please go forward.
Okay, so I've, of course, been studying this for quite a while. And the recycled water and any water at that sewer plant that they have in wells to help supplement their water supply at the plant is not drinking water. We are now under a permanent private well moratorium by a district that has no water authority. They think they do, but I think that the legislature knew perfectly well what the definition of water service was in 1985. And, maybe there was a preceding water code to 515, but I believe that they knew what water service meant. It doesn't mean sewer service. So the idea that they're recycling water, which is a recent requirement of sewer service, may not have existed in 1985, shall not be included as a water service to anybody. It's the sewer service, and certainly they recover that water. They can water and irrigate, but we're not gonna drink it. So I can't believe that we're gonna include that as some kind of justification for authority under 10702 or any other water service. Certainly we appreciate the sewer service in Mendocino, but I'm going to caution the commission to accept for all the information that the district produces for itself, because some of it may be misinformation. So anyway, if anybody has any questions, this well moratorium is going to have to end someday. If they were a district and formation would have been completed in 1985, then we would be part of a water system where they'd have to generate water to remedy this moratorium, or build some small systems, or somehow deliver water to the people who do not have clean and reliable drinking water. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Clark, do you have comments? And if you do, please state your name for the record and deliver your comment.
Yes, please. Paul Clark here. Just two comments. Measure A back in 1985, I have seen where that was on the ballot, but I have never seen where the property owners themselves, as they did for the sewer district, voted to join a water district. So if anybody can provide that, I would love to see it. I spoke to the property owner that prior to us, he had no recollection of that. And then also I just didn't have to, but I decided to sign the new permit that the district has sent out to all the property owners, as I did when we were forced to do one as a deed restriction. I signed it under protest because I still am not personally convinced that they have the rights to monitor our wells, although everybody from the district seems to think so. I've not been provided anything that shows where the property owners voted to join. That's really all I have, and thank you. Oh, and Mr. Gomes has a final comment.
As chair, I will allow a very quick comment, Mr. Gomes.
Yeah, this is just regarding Measure A, which just brought up. As far as I know, Measure A gave the authority to the water, or to the service district, to search for water. And in fact, I have all the documents for a water system that was created and it's completely engineered for the town that they, some reason, refused to build. And I think money was the issue they always talk about, but they also continue to say we have no water there, except that this water system had an adequate supply for the town. So I think that was Measure A. I don't think that anybody voted for the district to control their wells. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And if the three of you would stand by, I will go through each commissioner to see if they have comments or questions. We'll begin with Commissioner Ignacio.
No comments, thank you.
Commissioner McCowan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have some questions for clarification. I think these are pretty simple, probably could be a yes or no. Is there agreement that the district is authorized to provide water services?
So, Commissioner, who's your question to?
Well, let's try Mr. Gomes, maybe.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner McCowan.
Well,
we cannot.
I'll take a yes on that one.
No.
So I think everyone seems to be in agreement the district is authorized to provide water services. And I think part of your complaint is that they have not done so.
No, that's incorrect. I don't believe they have authorized to provide water service because they did not go to formation to become that function for the city services district.
Okay. And therefore wouldn't be authorized to manage groundwater.
No, not to the extent that they do. There was a memorandum of understanding with Mendocino County Health Department to administrate the Mendocino town plan for new water development.
Well, and this will, I'm sure we'll come back to the attorneys, but
that's
the conclusion in the staff report is that the district is legally authorized to provide water service, and therefore it is also authorized to provide groundwater management services. And that would be true whether they were supplying the water service or not. as long as they were authorized to provide it, they could also do groundwater management. That's what the staff report is telling me. So.
Thank you, Commissioner McCowan. We'll move on, Commissioner Bozzoni.
Well, no questions.
Okay, thank you. Somebody needs to mute. We're getting background. We'll go on to alternate Commissioner Winkle.
No questions at this time.
We're still on.
Commissioner Orr.
Excuse me, I didn't hear my name. Yes, just comment that water put to beneficial uses, my understanding now from answers to my prior question is that that does include purple pipe water being provided, and beneficial uses doesn't quote mean drinking water. It's water provided for a beneficial use. I believe that is the definition. Also, I note that staff has noted that development of an outside water source would require a latent power LAFCO review process. So I would just note those two things. Also, I would note that Brick Trails has done extensive water source studies to look for additional water sources, and that monetary problems, the cost of providing a new water source, such as a $40 million dam that would indeed provide water for the whole community, is still unavailable because of the cost. Thank you.
Commissioner Ward.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple questions for Steve Gomes. Steve, are you available? First of all, do you know if there are any water wells in the district that are being contaminated? My second question is, go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, there's a letter from Mike Kelly in that last package. I believe you have. I might have sent it twice, but all wells that were hand dug in the community, which may be up to, we don't really know, at least 35 to maybe 50, 60, 70 are hand dug, and they're all contaminated with bacterial. And it's just because they don't have water seals and they are in shallow water conditions.
Okay, and you also provided us three analyses for water supply for the town of Mendocino. They were all done in 1992 and 93. What happened to those?
We don't know. Nobody says. They just said, I did hear one director quite a few years ago say, well, we had water, but we didn't want it. So I don't know that, we don't have the history on if they took a board action. I don't know anything. I just do know that that study and that design has been available. They've never gone to, say, find federal and state grant money for that system. And so therefore money is always an issue, but I think grant money is available. Okay, thanks. And Commissioner McCowan brought up the idea of services, whether you have water services or not. But this is for staff on page 83 of the MSR under 3.1.1 services. Water services is not listed. We have wastewater collection and treatment, groundwater management, and street lighting, but not water services. So,
Commissioner Ward, I think that's in our final comments, not during the public comment period.
And then the last question is maybe to our Scott Brown, our attorney. If there are no bylaws, what is the effect of some of the decisions by the district?
Again, let's wait until our final comment. This is the speaker.
All right. I was on a roll.
I know. Just hang on here. Commissioner Gonzalez, do you have any comments or questions to these three speakers?
No questions.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Hinman, is there anyone else for public comment?
Yes, we have two additional people waiting for public comment.
please bring them on, and speakers, state your name for the record before you begin speaking.
As a reminder, this will be for Ed Powers. He will be joining us next. Please, Mr. Powers, please mute your computer and as you come in.
Please bring them on, and speakers, state your name for the record before you begin speaking.
Mr. Powers, are you on?
Yes. Hello?
We're in the meeting.
Okay. Should I go ahead and speak?
Yes, sir. State your name for the record.
Yes, this is Ed Powers, and I had provided some letters for the commissioners, and I'll try to answer a few questions that have been brought up, and just real briefly, I might mention the history of my involvement with the 500D properties. I'm assisting the property owners of a lot, undeveloped lot along 500D. And we're in the process of just finalizing the coastal development permit. And that was for the development of a well and the development of the septic system. And when looking into the septic system over a period of time, I found out that there was actually a sewer line running in front and actually on the property of the owners. And I also realized that the other septic systems in that area were all non-standard, and multiple ones had failed in the past. And on that failure, that is a developed parcel 11700 Road 500D, and I'll be glad to provide the commissioners with the information and paperwork on that if you'd like. I did show that to Mrs. Dooley. We met on site when we were looking at the well location that had been proposed. And because of the proximity of the forced main from Russian Gulf State Park, the property owners are unable to put the well in the location that was proposed, and because the well location relative to the proposed septic area, that became an additional problem. I'm not sure that it's unsolvable, but my recommendation to them, since all of the systems had failed in that area, and there was the sewer line availability, I said, instead of doing a septic system, let's look into the possibility of hooking up to the Mendocino sewer district. So that's kind of the brief history, and also address the failure system that I pointed out to Ms. Dooley, and I'll be, as I said, happy to provide paperwork to that amount. Otherwise, I'm glad to answer any questions that you may have, and I think that will probably conclude any comments that I have.
Thank you, Mr. Powers, and we'll begin with Commissioner McCowan.
I do have one question. Mr. Powers, have you contacted Russian Gulch about the possibility of tapping into their line?
I have, and we I sent off for the engineering drawings and the actual as-built drawings were different than what was proposed. And I did meet with the Sonoma Mendocino County Director. I think his name is Terry Bartels. I may have pronounced it wrong, and I met with him regarding this, and I think his basic position, although it will have to go up the chain of command, was to see what the MCCSD's position would be, and then get back with him. And so, to answer your question, yes, I have met with him.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bizzoni.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Alternate Commissioner Winkle.
No questions at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Orth.
Thank you, Chair. It's special note that the sewer line does run through that particular property, so that is of interest, and the contact with the state and the comment that they're waiting for a response from the district. It seems that our staff and the district and the property owner, you know, these reviews come around every 5 years. And when an issue like this comes up, it's important to look at the 5-year window that we have. In other words, we will revisit in 5 years. And I do think that gives adequate time for the different entities to resolve some of these questions in the affirmative or negative. And that, I think, is something I would like to point out to the commissioners, that we will be back here in 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, we hope they come back in 5 years. It's been 12 years since the last MSR. But my concern, I guess, is for the next 5 years, should we be including that area, Mr. Powers' area, for annexation or out area services or something like that? So, but I don't have any questions for Mr. Powers.
Thank you. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Both Commissioner McGowan and Commissioner Ward have covered what I was thinking.
Thank you. Commissioner Ignacio.
The only follow-up I had was a question with regards to the timeline. Did the Russian Gulch say when they thought they would have a response from the district?
Is a question for me?
This question is for Ed Powers.
Yes, this is Ed Powers, and no, the timeline was basically for me to get back with SMART once there was feedback from the district and from the commissioners as this meeting is presently going on. I would like to address the 5-year plan, and as I think Commissioner Ward had mentioned, it was 12 years ago since the last time this has been addressed, and another 5 years of failing systems and the potential inability of people to develop a lot that they've done for decades doesn't seem like a very reasonable approach, for my personal opinion.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Powers. And anyone else, Ms. Hinman, for public comment?
Yes, we have one person in the waiting room. I will bring them in. This is Mr.
And please restate your name for the record when you begin.
Hello?
Mr. Wood, you are in the meeting for public comment.
Okay, yes, I'm here. I'm available.
Do you have comments, sir?
Not about the prior things, but I do want to offer a public comment, yes.
Please go forward.
Can you hear me, Madam Chair?
Yes, I can, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you. My name's Charles Crescent Wood. I'm a resident of Mendocino County, owning property within the boundaries of MCCSD. And I had previously provided some comments about the sphere of influence for the MCCSD. I questioned whether or not they should have power to ration water within the boundaries of their powers. I wish to bring to the LAFCO's attention the
Sir?
Yes.
Please go forward.
Okay. This is Charles Crescent Wood. I'm a property owner within the boundaries of MCCSD.
Yes, we got all of that, but you cut out on us.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, at any rate, I did provide some prior written statements questioning the ability to ration the water. And the data point that I wish to bring to the Commission's attention is the fact that we're now under phase 4 rationing, the most severe 50-year drought. And that decision to ration is based on a model which is based only on rainfall. And this is totally out of sync with the neighboring conditions. So we have a 40% restriction in water here in Mendocino County, but I'm sorry, here in the MCCSD zone, but Fort Bragg has no restrictions. Santa Rosa has no restrictions. Point Arena has no restrictions. So the model they're using to make decisions about rationing based only on rainfall doesn't work, and I don't believe that MCCSD should be given powers to ration because their model doesn't work. And that's the end of my statement. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And if you'll hang on for just a moment, we'll see if anyone has questions of you. Commissioner Bozzoni?
No questions, thank you.
Alternate Commissioner Winkle?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Orth?
No questions.
Commissioner Ward?
No questions.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
No questions.
Commissioner Ignacio?
No questions.
Commissioner McCowan?
Nope.
Okay, thank you, sir, for your public comment.
Thank you.
Ms. Hinman, anyone else?
We have no other commenters in the waiting room. We still have Ed Powers and the group of Mr. Gomes, Barbara Reed, and Paul Clark.
Okay, but what I want to do with this public hearing, we need to move now to final comments by the district, and then we'll go to final comments by staff. And I know that Commissioner Ward has a number of questions, but first we'll have the district speak. Mr. Jackson?
Yes, hi, Madam Chairman. Jim Jackson for the district. A couple of points. Barbara Reed was talking about a January meeting, and I believe she's confusing bylaws, which were adopted many years ago, with a meeting that was discussing adoption of parliamentary procedures. Like Robert's Rule of Order, that wasn't the one that the chair was proposing. And it has not yet been finally adopted. We had a number of other issues that were far more pressing for the district, but I'm sure that's going to come back up again. And Mr. Wood, his statement of our model is not entirely accurate. It's based on rainfall during the rainy season, but come August, it's based on depth of water in a couple of dozen monitoring wells in the district, because obviously, you can't measure anything by rainfall in the summertime. So the model's a little more sophisticated than you might think, and it was developed by a noted hydrologist, and it seems to work. So I'm available to answer any questions any of the commissioners may have.
Thank you, sir. I do have one comment that I'm hoping staff will know where the bylaws are and be able to make them available when asked by the public. And then also, it probably would be an excellent idea to have your bylaws on your website. So I'd like to move forward and go to Commissioner Ward.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Jackson, with some of the public comments here that some of the water wells are contaminated because they're not very deep enough, blah, blah, blah. But there was also some studies performed back in 1992 for water supplies to the town of Mendocino. Do you recall what might have happened to those studies, and if there's any interest in the near future of looking at additional water supplies for the committee? You heard the testimony from the Environmental Health Department that it would be best to take the private wells and put it into a municipal system. Is that something that the district is pursuing?
Well, we looked at a lot of different possible locations for water source. We looked at the gulches on Big River, on property owned by Georgia Pacific at the time, which is now State Park. We looked out at the Cal Fire Station, which apparently has copious water, but a lot of local objection to putting a site for water there. And we looked up at Casper, where there's a large pond you've probably seen as you drive by, and the thought was, sort of like Owens Valley in Los Angeles, to reach that far up to get water for the district. And ultimately, I think it fell because of cost. It was a multi-million-dollar project. The district pursued that for a number of years and, essentially decided it could not find an adequate source of water for a reasonable cost, and accordingly fell back on groundwater management, which obviously we would prefer to be able to supply potable water to the district if we could. But the groundwater management has protected the overall groundwater in the district pretty effectively. We got through some of the worst droughts we've ever seen without too many people running out of water. And that's the main problem that I'm aware of with the shallow wells is once the groundwater aquifer drops, the wells run dry. So I'm not aware of any widespread contamination of wells, although, anybody drinking water from a shallow well is probably drinking a little bit of something else too.
Okay, well, thank you for your comment. As you know, CALAFCO probably can't do anything to force the district to do any of these kinds of things, but I would encourage the district to inform your constituents there that you've looked at studies, the cost. Just let people know what you're trying to do to encourage a municipal water system so that it would benefit the community, as well as the failing sewer systems, doing what you can to help out with, say, Road 500D and whatnot, just to be more, have more information for the public to know that the district is doing the best they can, the most they can to bring these systems into a municipal system for the benefit of all. So I would encourage you to do that, or in your district board to do that. Again, LAFCO can't force it, but we would just encourage those kinds of things because in the long run, I think we'll benefit from that. But I appreciate your comments today, and we'll look forward to seeing some improvements in the future. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
No, I think Commissioner Ward covered it.
Thank you. Commissioner Ignacio.
Thank you for the presentation. No further questions.
Commissioner McCowan.
No.
Commissioner Bazzoni.
No questions. Thank you.
Alternate Commissioner Winkle.
No questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Orth.
Yes, I would like to ask whether the has any failed sewer system owner actually contacted the district with a request to connect to the municipal sewer system?
No, sir. Ed Powers, on behalf of the owner of the undeveloped lot, has approached us, but we've not been contacted by any of these neighboring properties which are purportedly in failure.
Thank you. That's my only question.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jackson. And now we'll go to LAFCO staff for final comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Analyst Eiler. There were a number of questions raised, and I did want to just mention related to the Water Services Authority question. You know, it based on the research we did, it does look like the district followed the laws at the time to add water services to authority. And that was based on the vote by the voters in 1985. And I just wanted to point out that Mr. Clark mentioned that the property owners had not voted to join the district, and that is because it's a registered voter district, and so those types of elections occur based on the registered voters, not the property owners. And then, so basically, because the way that the CSD Principal Act was established in 1955, any powers that were not established at the time of original formation of the district, the 1955 law required registered voter approval, and so that is why the district proceeded with that process, is my understanding. And then, you know, basically SB 135 effectively made active powers of all the services and facilities in place by local agencies as of January 1, 2006. And so I just wanted to reaffirm that no further action is needed by LAFCO related to those water services and groundwater management services that have been exercised by the district to date. And one more comment, just Commissioner Ward mentioned on page 83, section 3.1.1.1, he is correct. There was an omission of water service there. And so if the commission is pursuing adoption today, I would suggest that it be based on revising that section to add water service. That was just an omission by staff. And I think that's all for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll go through the commission. Alternate Commissioner Winkle, questions?
Not at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Orth?
No further questions.
Commissioner Ward?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Council Brown mentioned earlier on in the discussion about the sphere of influence. If we take it a coterminous, then in annexation by Mr. Powers or what have you, is that something that we need to discuss further? I certainly would not like to encourage any kind of development we can with Mr. Powers and not limiting his ability to do such. So. That's the only question I have as far as the SOI. Thanks.
Okay. Any comment back, staff?
Madam Chair, this is Analyst Filer. So we did originally have Road 500D as an area of interest, and it was our understanding that the direction from the June workshop was to really only identify those areas of interest if the district board of directors had interest in that, and we received feedback that that was not the interest of the district, so we removed that from the study. That was staff's suggestion of identifying the area for future review. I believe if the commission is interested in amending the sphere to actually include additional area, we would need to potentially conduct environmental review. So if that's the direction the commission chooses to go today, we would likely need to come back at a later date based on that particular aspect of review. And that's all.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Gonzalez.
No questions of staff.
Commissioner Ignacio.
No.
I think somebody needs to go on mute. We're getting background. Thank you. Commissioner McCowan.
No questions. I will have one of council.
Okay, Commissioner Bazzoni.
No questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll go back to Supervisor, sorry, John, Commissioner McCowan. Please ask your question of legal counsel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we heard a lot of discussion about what the district is or isn't authorized to do. Staff seems clearly of the opinion that the district is authorized to provide water services, and therefore, whether they are doing so or not, they're also authorized to provide groundwater management. Do you agree with that position?
Yes.
And then the issue of bylaws, and I believe the district is saying they do have bylaws adopted, but I think you may have said that they don't necessarily have to have bylaws. And in fact, I think the language cited from the government code section by Mr. Gomes says they have to have rules of procedure or bylaws. So do you have any reason to think that they're not authorized to conduct business?
No, I mean, I think that if the CSD law has a specific requirement that they have adopted policies and procedures, they do need to comply with the law in terms of that. But again, whether they have adopted a procedure that specifically addresses an issue raised by the commenters is not clear. I mean, the state law doesn't tell them exactly what needs to be in their bylaws. So I think it leaves the district with broad discretion in terms of establishing its policies and bylaws. And in the absence of a specific policy or bylaw, the board can act based on what it believes is in the best interest of the district.
Thank you.
Commissioners, do we have any other questions, comments, or statements?
Commissioner Ward, like to make a comment?
Yes, sir.
This is what I was speaking of in the past, that there's confusion that I think the district has an obligation to inform their constituents of these kinds of things, so they don't go around thinking that there is no bylaws or there are no studies. I just think that the district should be a little more forthright with the community and try to settle some of these issues rather than have it a complaint to LAFCO. So that was my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else? Staff, any final comments?
No further comments, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So as chair and moving forward in this public hearing process, I'm going to close the public hearing unless there's any commissioner that believes we should continue this public hearing. Hearing no one express that, I'm going to close the public hearing. I'm going to be asking for final deliberations among the commission, and also I will be looking for a motion. So I'm going to let any commissioner come forward.
Okay, I have a question of staff. On the
Commissioner Orth?
On the resolution to suggested motion, you said we needed to add a word on water service. Where would that be?
Madam Chair, analyst filer, so it is page 83 of the packet, and it is section 3.1.1.1.
So that is okay. So that's just a correction you need to make for the record, not for the motion itself.
It probably should be incorporated in the motion.
Right. It is a correction that should be made. It just was missed in this portion of the document.
Also move the correction and move resolution number 2020-21-01, approving adoption of the Mendocino City Community Services District Municipal Service Review and Sphere of Influence Update. Is that adequate?
I would have to go to staff. There are 2 recommendations. I think we only read a portion in.
Was the move to approve or move to deny, I guess is what we need to clear up.
Oh, I'm sorry, move to approve.
Do we have a second?
This is Commissioner Gonzalez. I will second that with the changes requested.
Okay, and that's noted on page 83 as indicated by staff, and I believe it was Commissioner Ward that asked the question. So do we have any comment, questions of the motion? Commissioners?
Madam Chair, if I may, this is Analyst Tyler. Does that motion also include the first motion to find it exempt from CEQA?
Yes. They said the recommended motion 1 and 2 with the revision on page 83.
I agree.
Thank you.
Okay. And it was seconded.
Thank you.
Yes. All righty. Hearing no one else to speak to the motion, we'll have a roll call vote, please.
All right. Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yes.
Commissioner Orth?
Yes.
Commissioner Bazzani?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan?
Yes.
And Commissioner Ignacio?
Yes.
Chair Brown?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, and I would very much like to thank the public for their participation, the district for working with us, and this will be back in 5 years, I think, as was stated earlier. So that concludes our public hearing.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Ward, I would like to make sure that we do look at this in 5 years, not 8, not 12, because it is important that some of those issues be resolved, hopefully within 5 years. So I could make a tickler in the file that we want to really look at this within that period of time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All righty.
Commissioner Ignacio.
Yes, sir.
Just refresh my memory. I'm having some short-term loss. Did we cover agenda item number 2 this morning?
Yes.
Yes, we did. For
Thank
public
you very much.
expression, Okay. I'm going to call a 5-minute break so we can all take a stretch. So we're going to start this break at 10:41 and be back at 10:46 so we can do a little stretches. Okay, thank you. on our agenda, and those are workshop items. There are none. So we'll move on to item number 6, matters for discussion and possible action. We have 6A, proposed amended legal representation agreement. Ms. Hinman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Commission has utilized the law office of Scott Brown for our legal representation since 2014. Since that time, there have been amendments to the contract to clarify billable expenses and to add a provision for special projects, which was approved earlier this year. There's been one rate increase since 2014.
Excuse me, Ms. Hinman. Someone needs to go on mute. There's background noise. Thank you. Go forward.
Since that time, there's been one rate increase, which was in 2017. During the public hearing for the fiscal year 2020-2021 final budget, staff was directed to bring forward an amended contract for legal representation that included the proposed rate increase in the monthly average hours and rates for general legal services. The monthly average will increase from 3 to 4 hours per month for a total of $900 per month, which is consistent with the adopted budget for the $10,200 for the year for legal services and represents the general services anticipated for the year. Additionally, the amended contract includes clarifying language for consistency with LAFCO's standard fee agreement and indemnification related to applicant reimbursement of legal counsel fees. Mr. Brown's rate for application-related services would be $250 per hour. By billing for our legal counsel's time on applications, the monthly average is hoped to be sufficient to cover the general legal services. Staff is recommending approval of the proposed amended legal representation agreement, which is included on page 138 of your packet. And that concludes my presentation, unless there are questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hinman. And I do have a statement. As chair and working with staff in between meetings, there are times when we do need Mr. Brown's advice. I have found that more in this last year than in previous times, and I do support it. So moving forward, Commissioner Orth.
Yes, I support this. I think it's also important to have our attorney present. Brook Trails has an attorney attend all our meetings. I found it to be invaluable to have a direct ability to question an attorney during a meeting. Even this last public hearing we just went through clearly demonstrates, I think, the need. So I do support the new contract. Thank you.
Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any comments other than on the special project billings. I haven't seen one yet, but I'd like to see that it be separate billings showing the amount of time spent for the special project and the cost, so that I know that it gets properly billed to that particular applicant. Other than that, I agree with the contract, and we'll move forward. Thank you.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
No comments. I agree with Commissioner Orth. It's invaluable to have legal counsel, and I hate kicking things to the next meeting because we had to wait.
Thank you. Commissioner Ignacio.
Just hearken everything everyone said in these complicated times. I think it's become the new order of business to have counsel present at the meetings, and I've been very happy to work with Scott Brown, and I believe we should support the contract. Thank you.
Commissioner McCowan.
Well, I think it is valuable to have the attorney available on an as-needed basis at meetings. I think you can usually predict when it's really going to be needed. But other than that, I don't have any quibbles about the contract. I support, I think it was Commissioner Ward who asked for a clear breakout of what's being billed to the commission and what is being billed as special projects. And we really should be mindful of making sure we are billing that out when appropriate. And my final comment, it is Mr. Brown's responsibility to educate himself on LAFCO law if he chooses to attend legislative hearings dealing with LAFCO issues, attend LAFCO conferences. That's his responsibility to maintain his skill set. I don't think it's something that should show up on our billing.
Commissioner Bazzoni.
I have no comment.
Alternate Commissioner Winkle.
I have no comment either.
Okay. Staff, any comment back? For Mr. Brown?
I just point out that I do itemize and I'm keeping a separate reference item for each project. And so I've been working closely with UMA to make sure that the billing is very clear, and will continue to do so.
Thank you, sir. So do we have any public comment on this item?
We've received no public comment and no one is in the waiting room at this time.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, we do have a recommended motion. I'd like to hear from one of you. Please state your name for the record.
This is John McCowan. I will actually move approval of the recommended item with comment after the vote.
Okay, do we have a second?
This is Commissioner Gonzalez, and I will second.
Thank you. Okay, no other comment. Clerk, please conduct the roll call vote.
Okay, Commissioner Bazzani?
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan?
Yes.
Commissioner Orth?
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes.
Commissioner Ignacio?
Yes.
Chair Brown?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Commissioner McCowan?
Thank you, Chair Brown. I do believe strongly that it is Mr. Brown's responsibility to maintain his level of knowledge and expertise in LAFCO. That's why we hire him. We shouldn't be paying him to go to LAFCO conferences and attend hearings and so forth. That is part of the contract. We're not only obligating ourselves to pay for a proportionate share of his time in doing those things, but also a proportionate share of his out-of-pocket expenses. I moved to approve this because I felt the commission would move forward and approve it with that in there. I really would encourage Mr. Brown to rethink, is this really appropriate? And perhaps the commission can revisit this a year from now. Thank you.
Okay. Comment made. No other comments. We're moving on to 6B on our agenda, CALAFCO 2020 Board of Directors nominations and voting
Brown,
delegate.
Commissioner Ignacio, I believe council was attempting to make a comment.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry.
I would
Mr. Brown?
If I may, I would just like to respond that I think that first, your proportionate share of those expenses is something like 1/8. It's very nominal. And I do believe that the participation in the CALAFCO Legislative Committee at the staff workshops and conferences when they are going to occur, is extremely valuable for Mendocino LAFCO. It's such a good opportunity to network with other LAFCOs and find out what's going on in other LAFCOs that directly assist me in providing a better service to you. This is not like the general mandatory continuing education that an attorney has to do. This is participating above and beyond the normal level of any legal counsel for LAFCOs. I do so because I feel it is in the interest of my commissions. And frankly, this is the very first time any of the commissions have questioned it. Almost uniformly, they encourage me to participate, just as I trust you encourage UMA to participate in CALAFCO. And nevertheless, I will keep it in mind and make sure that it doesn't impose an onerous burden on Mendocino LAFCO.
Thank you for your comment, and I apologize just being on the phone because I don't have reliable broadband. Sometimes puts me behind the curve. So thank you so much, Commissioner, for pointing out that Mr. Brown wanted to speak. All right, moving on to 6B, CALAFCO 2020 Board of Directors nominations and voting delegate. Staff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are 2 upcoming openings on the CALAFCO Board of Directors for the Northern Region, which are currently held by Josh Sussman, who is a public member from Nevada County, and Blake Ensor, who is a city member from Del Norte. CALAFCO is now accepting nominations for a city member and a public member. The deadline for submitting that nomination is September 22nd. This year, because CALAFCO's in-person annual conference has been canceled, the elections will take place by email and during the virtual annual business meeting, which will be held in October. Each member LAFCO is required to select a voting delegate who will be responsible for completing the electronic election ballot process and participating in the virtual annual business meeting. The Board of Directors nomination packet is in your agenda packet starting on page 143. Staff is requesting direction from the Commission regarding 2 items, whether the Commission wishes to submit a nomination for either the city or the public member, and also selection of a voting delegate for staff and CALAFCO to work with on the ballot and election process. And we do need to submit that voting delegate to CALAFCO, I believe it's this month. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. So we're gonna go forward, commissioners. Commissioner Ward.
No comments.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
No comment.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ignacio.
No comment. I'm sure this will come back next month. Thank you.
Commissioner McCowan.
No comment.
Commissioner Bazzoni.
No comment. Thank you.
Alternate Commissioner Winkle.
No comment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes. Commissioner Orth.
Only comment is I agree it can come back next month.
So with that, I want to ask staff, when did you say the deadline is?
September 22nd.
Okay, so it can come back next month. And I just want the commission ready to make the recommendations. And some of you that have attended through the years, like I have, I believe know who these individuals are. So be prepared to take action at our next meeting, the first Monday in September. Or maybe it's the second, because we might have a Labor Day. holiday there. So I'm going to look really quickly. September 14th. So we'll just barely making it under the deadline. So with no other comment, we're going to move on to 6C, CALAFCO call for legislative action. Ms. Hinman?
Thank you. CALAFCO occasionally sends its member LAFCOs a call for legislative action on proposed legislation that affects LAFCOs throughout the state. We've received a request for letters of opposition to Senate Bill 414, which is the Small System Water Authority Act of 2020. CALAFCO has been supporting this bill for the past several years, which is currently in Assembly appropriations. However, amendments have been proposed that are expected to have a negative impact on LAFCOs and set precedent by giving a state agency quasi-legislative authority for a new water authority. 2 draft opposition letters are included in the agenda packet starting on page 158, one to Senator Caballero, who is the author of the bill, and one to Appropriations. The bill language and history was included with the agenda packet email. I'm happy to try to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, and we'll begin with Commissioner Gonzalez.
Can I pass for a sec? I lost my place.
Okay. Moving forward, Commissioner Ignacio.
No comment at this time, thank you.
Commissioner McCowan.
No comment.
Commissioner Bazzani.
No comment, thank you.
Alternate Commissioner Winkle.
No comment, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Orth.
Well, here we are. I would like to ask our legal counsel his view on this legislation. It certainly looks like, again, the state is about to take an authority away from LAFCO, but leave us in the loop where we have to expend funds for the public hearing process, which, as you know, can be quite expensive. So your comments, please, sir.
Well, I think you've summarized it very well. Basically, they're pushing more and more of the decision-making on water issues away from local control back up to the state and to a body that's not particularly good at handling the technical and administrative matters of it. I mean, why they don't just say, okay, we will make a determination that forces consideration by LAFCO, and then LAFCO consider it, versus basically them doing everything except the final administrative process and dumping that final headache on us. It's just a very poor model and represents frankly, the arrogance I think we get from the legislature as to lack of local ability to deal with issues.
Thank you for that. And I support the letter being sent in opposition and making revision suggestions.
Thank you, Commissioner Orth. Commissioner Ward.
Yes, I approve the recommendation.
Okay, I'd like to go back to Commissioner Orth. Did you say make some changes?
No, just I support the letters as written.
Okay, are you ready to make that motion?
Also move that Mendocino LAFCO send the 2 letters as written by staff with our chair's signature.
I'll second.
And who was the second, please?
John McCowan.
Thank you. Now I recognize the voice. So we have a motion on the floor. We have a second. Commissioners, any other comment? Hearing none. Clerk, please conduct a roll call vote.
Certainly. Commissioner McCowan?
Yes.
Commissioner Bazzani?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes.
Commissioner Orth?
Yes.
Commissioner Ignacio?
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yes.
Chair Brown?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, I oopsed, but we had no one in the waiting room for public comment, correct?
That is correct. No
Okay.
public.
I marked it off sooner than I should have without asking. All right. Moving on to agenda item number 7, information and report items. These are only reports, and the commission can give general direction to staff. So we'll start with 7A, the work plan, current and future proposals. There is a written report. Ms. Hinman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This staff report is on page 163 of your agenda packet. We have 2 active currently. The Wager Mendocino Coast Healthcare District detachment application was approved by the Commission in March of this year. The certificate of completion has been recorded and the State Board of Equalization packet has been submitted. We are in the process of completing the final distribution to the county agencies and affected parties. The City of Ukiah detachment of Ukiah Valley Sanitation District served areas. In April of 2020, the City of Ukiah submitted a request to restart a 2014 application that had been deemed incomplete and placed on hold by the city in 2015. Has provided correspondence to the city regarding additional needs for the application, consisting of a new application submittal due to the lapse of time and change in conditions, and also noting the application is premature pending completion of the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District sphere update. We have a number of future proposals. We still have the Anderson Valley CSD proposed activation of latent powers to provide water and sewer services. There's been no movement on that we are aware of. We also received information regarding the Ukiah Valley Fire District annexation of the City of Ukiah. That is a proposal that has been discussed by the Ukiah Valley Fire Authority, JPA, and the City of Ukiah, who did direct their staff to initiate the process of annexing the City of Ukiah into the Fire District. We have not received an application to date. Some updates on the work plan. Pleased to say that the Mendocino City CSD, MSR, and sphere update has been completed today. Ukiah Valley Sanitation District, we have received their response to the request for information, and we've been collecting available documentation on that and starting the administrative draft. The City of Ukiah is also scheduled to begin this year. The Covelo Community Services District administrative draft MSR sphere update is in process, and we are still on hold with the County Service Area 3 MSR SOI until further notice at this time due to the pandemic. And that's all I have unless there are questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hinman. And rather than go through the roll, any commissioner that would like to speak, please come on and state your name for the record.
Commissioner Ward has a comment.
Go forward, sir.
Uma, there in the past, you were doing a summary schedule of the costs, what we would do for the work plan, where you were up to date. Are you going to continue to provide those in the future?
Yes, I'm sorry, we did forget that for this packet. We will include that updated spreadsheet in the future packet.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
Yes, I have a question.
Go forward.
On County Service Area 3, it says that, of course, because of the pandemic, there's delays in getting a response. I know that Supervisor Brown has been assigned to work with the Fire Safe Council on a fire abatement ordinances. I just notify the commission I'll be having a discussion with Chair Brown about Service Area 3 and its functionality to potentially service that. And I just want to let the commission know I'll be having that talk on Service Area 3 potential. Thank you.
Thank you, and that was Commissioner Orth. I could tell by the voice. Any other commissioner? And comment from the chair. I look forward in talking with you, Mr. Orth. So, hearing no other comments, statements, or asking questions, I don't think general direction was given to staff.
Yes.
Okay. Correspondence. And that,
No correspondence to report.
okay, that was 7B. 7C, Executive Officers Report. This is a verbal report. Ms. Henwin.
Thank you. I wanted to report that Commissioner Huff, which was one of our special district regular members, resigned from the Mendocino Coast Recreation and Park District Board effective last week, thereby making him ineligible to continue on our commission. Staff will be initiating the independent special district election process this week, and alternate Commissioner Bazzani will fill his role until the election process is completed. And again, per state and local health orders, non-essential offices, which includes our LAFCO office, are again closed to the public. Staff is continuing to regularly visit the office to collect mail and respond to information needs. We have sent out notice of the office closure to our listserv. And as Chair Brown already mentioned, I just wanted to remind the commissioners that our next meeting will fall on the second Monday of the month in September. So that will be September 14th, and that's due to the Labor Day falling on the first Monday. And that's all I have right now.
Okay, and thank you, but I would suggest, we're going to miss Mr. Huff, but I think there should be a letter from LAFCO thanking him for his service. And are we going to begin the process of notifying for his seat?
Yes, we'll begin that process this week, and I'll be able to report on it at our next meeting. It happened after, I was notified after the agenda packet went out this time.
Okay. Commissioners? Not hearing anyone that would like to speak. I think you all support my suggestion of a letter to Mr. Huff. So we'll move forward to 7D, and this is committee reports. I can start. The executive committee has not met, but they are proposing a meeting. Do we have a date for that meeting yet, staff?
I believe we are still working on finalizing a date for that.
Yes,
Okay.
I believe I emailed the executive committee asking for potential times when you guys are free. And then if you have responded, I will review and get back to you.
Okay, thank you so much, because it is drawing near, and two of those dates were at the end of this week. So if you could do that, I really appreciate it.
I will as soon as possible.
Great.
Commissioner
and then Policies and Procedures Committee.
This Commissioner Ward, Policy and Procedure has not met.
Did we have any item that was recommended to the committee to review?
I'm not aware of any. This is Commissioner Ward. I'm not aware of any.
We have two policies that were discussed at our last Policies and Procedures Committee meeting. We needed legal review on both of them, so that has, I will follow up on that and then have it ready. I believe we may have enough to schedule the next Policies and Procedures meeting soon, so I'll be sure to coordinate closely with you, Commissioner Ward.
Thank you.
Yes, Thank you very much. So moving forward to commissioners' reports, that's 7E. Commissioners, comments, questions?
This is Commissioner Orth, and I would just note that I'm available for the executive committee meeting at any of the proposed dates, and I'm flexible. So I'm just letting the clerk know that, and Chair Brown.
Thank you.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Ignacio. I also responded by email to the clerk, and I'd like to hear about it. I have some family medical coming up. Under comments, I would normally wait to the end, but I'd like to thank our chair for another successful, informative, and smooth running meeting. Very well done.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay. And we need to hear back about executive committee. I know I responded, and I believe there was one, maybe perhaps 2 days I can't be on.
Okay.
So moving, hello?
Oh, sorry. This is Clerk Meadows. I'll be sure to let you all know today.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And then 7F, CALAFCO business and legislative report.
There's a couple of items from CalAFCO starting on page 165 of the packet. One is a letter from the CalAFCO notifying that the in-person meeting of the conference has been canceled. They are looking at options, including some online or virtual workshop type things. There's also the quarterly newsletter, I guess, that starts on page 166. This was emailed to you earlier in the month, but we included it in the agenda packet as well. And that's all that we have at this time. CalAFCO is continuing to provide some support. I think it's every other week now. They provide webinars that is free support to its LAFCO members regarding virtual meetings and various issues that come up, which has been very beneficial and has been helpful as we navigate these times. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you very much. And I would just like to add, and all the commissioners probably should hear this, with the office closed again, usually to get checks signed and what have you, the clerk has been scheduling a time with Commissioner McCowan, and then either Commissioner Ward or myself can communicate via email with Savings Bank to give our verbal approval of the second signature. So, with no other business, it's time to adjourn, but I want to remind everyone, Monday, September 14th at 9 a.m. will be our next meeting. And it appears we're going to adjourn at 11:20. So thank you, everyone. It's been a good meeting today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be well.